All right. So I'm sure you would have gone through the course content already on the website, but let me just take you through what is it that we will cover as part of the course here. So first we begin with KP astrology, meaning introduction to KP astrology. Basically, I have divided the course into 3 parts. So as part 1, it is going to be introduction to KP astrology. Then we will understand more about planets, houses, and zodiac signs. We will get to reading a chart. I hope everybody has installed KPNoX Plus, but I believe Raghuji, you have only used
I
the web
only have,
version right now. Okay.
yeah, I've logged in. So I checked in the morning, could not install, but I logged into the web version in the morning.
Okay. All right. So there will be some differences that you will notice, definitely.
Okay.
But I think
Okay.
it's okay to get started. Not an issue.
Okay.
Then we will move on to, DBA or map, which is Dasha Bhukti Antara. In some products, maybe you would have seen it as Mahadasha, Antardasha, and Pratyantardasha. They're one and the same. Then we will go and understand a little more about aspects and conjunction. We have a separate section for Rahu and Ketu because they deserve a lot more than what we can discuss under just planets. Apart from that, we will see what is sublord and what are ruling planets. Then we move on to Prashna Kundli or Horari and why do we need them. Then we will discuss about a very important concept called as transit. This is especially important for timing of events. So these two will more or less be clubbed together. So this will be up to part 1 where we will be talking about KP. And then we introduce ourselves to Vastu. What are the different elements and colors? Then we will know a little more about directions and entrances and how do we analyze a plan. Now, when I say Vastu, I will only be covering parts which are required for us because Vastu by itself is an ocean. It's a different subject altogether. But whatever I am covering as part of the course is from the remedial perspective. So how do we identify issues and how do we give a remedy? Okay. Then, of course, we will be discussing about the 3 different cycles that we have in Vastu and balancing techniques as per Vastu. So at this point, it will complete part 2 of the course. And part 3 is where we start clubbing the two. We see how we can start mapping our chart with that of Vastu and how do we design remedies. Now, if somebody comes to you and they say, I have this problem, point number 1, you should be able to see the problem visually in the chart. And then based on that, you will actually design a remedy. I don't believe in, standard remedies, which normally a lot of AstroVastu consultants sell. I'm using the word sell because it's commercialized, literally commercialized. I'm sure you would have seen on YouTube or you would have read people saying that you need to use a white horse or red bulb and so on and so forth. They have got tons and tons of remedies which are commercially sold. So here we are not going to be discussing about any of those things. The focus is on how you design a remedy, because I believe that if there is a problem, there is a solution right next to it. So we should be able to use that concept and design remedies. And the remedy can be anything. So as we will see down the line, you will understand that remedies are pretty simple and quite effective when it is kept simple. And of course, I have highlighted case studies here because as part of KP itself, we will start working on charts and every single chart will come from you. It is not from my side. I will not tell you that I have these a number of charts. I will show you, I'll explain everything and I'm done with the course. No, every single chart will come from your side. We'll be covering various topics, especially during KP. So you will, let's say, for example, we are covering marriage. So you can bring your own charts. In the sense, it could be your friends, your family, relatives, anybody. We don't need to know who they are, no names, nothing. So let's say under marriage, you can look at one or two cases for divorce, one or two cases for remarriage, so on and so forth. And if it is profession, you can see somebody who is into a job successful or job struggling, or somebody is in business doing extremely well, so on and so forth. So in every case, every single chart that we discuss in the course will be from your side. So that way you get to see about 8 to 10 charts in each topic that we do. And we'll use the same charts when we start talking about remedies. So if somebody is going through any kind of a problem, stress related, whatever it is, somebody not able to find a job, whatever be the problem, we'll see how we work on the same charts and design remedies. So you can start testing it. Okay. So this is the overall content, and we have 25 sessions in total. So if you have anything that you want to find out or ask me, you can do that right now, and then we will get started. Any questions on this part?
No, sir.
Yes, sir. I have one query, sir. These 25 sessions would be from Monday to Friday?
Monday to Friday, 1 hour per day. So that
Right,
way
sir.
you have for 5 weeks.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah, so that way, see, the objective was not to overload on any front. So if it is 1 hour, it's a good amount of time to cover certain topics, and then you get time to revise, because astrology is all about revision, how much you practice. So if, let's say, we discuss about 40 charts or 50 charts in the course, you need to individually work on plenty of charts to get a hang of it. So that way, the course is spread out, so you have sufficient time for revision and practice. And before I start every session, if you have any queries about the previous one, we can quickly clarify and then proceed. So that's how I have made the course. Okay, so we can get started then.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I think somebody has lost connection. Just a second. Maybe there are some messages on WhatsApp. Not able to connect. Okay. So let's get started with the introduction to KP. Now, KP stands for Krishnamurti Paddhati. Krishnamurti ji was one of the, the greatest astrologers during the 20th century. He was extremely good not only in Vedic astrology, but he was also extremely good in Western astrology. Now, even though he was an expert in both these fields, there were areas where he was not able to arrive at the right prediction or time it right. So he did a lot of research, and then finally he came up with a concept which we call as KP, that is Krishnamurti Paddhati, wherein he took the foundation as Vedic astrology, but then he superimposed Western astrology on top of this, so which basically uses a system called Placidus. Now, Placidus system of house division basically tells us that houses are unequal. Now, when we see Vedic astrology, we always say there are 12 houses and each house is 30 degrees. Whereas in the Western concept, they don't accept this. Instead, they use what is referred to as Placidus system, wherein houses can vary in terms of length. So it need not be 30 degrees. It could be less or more. So once he started, clubbing the two forms, he started getting amazing results. And what he also did was he came up with the concept of what we refer to as sublords, which we will see as we start discussing. So because of this, it not only helped astrologers, time events with greater accuracy, but it also started helping AstroVastu consultants to identify problems as well as work on remedies. That is, you cannot see this form of AstroVastu application in any other form of astrology. I know there are people using Lal Kitab or Gemini, so many forms of astrology, but still, when you say AstroVastu, KP gives you the best results in a very simple manner, simple, organized, and easy manner. Okay, and it's still research in progress because there are so many areas where it's still very gray. And although he gave us the entire concept, but still we have a long way to go before we can perfect the system. There are thousands of astrologers working on this globally, and they have given a lot of extensions to this, and they have brought out their own concepts as well. But here we will see what Sri Krishnamurti ji told us and how we use it, and we can build on this further. Now, what forms the crux of KP? These are the points. So the first thing is we will discuss about what I call as the 5 pillars of KP astrology. And then these are all coming from the Vedic part of it. There are 9 planets, there are 12 houses, 12 zodiac signs, or which is also referred to as Rashi signs. Although Sri Krishnamurti ji didn't give a lot of importance to the Rashi signs themselves, they become important in certain cases only. That we will see as we take up case studies. And then there are 27 nakshatras. Just a second. Audio not available. Is everybody able to hear me, or is there any disturbance?
No, we can hear you clearly, sir. I can hear you clearly.
Okay,
Clear, sir.
audio seems to be fine. Okay. And there are 27 nakshatras. Again, in KP, we don't really go in depth into nakshatras. We have something called star lords, which we will talk about. And finally, we have the transit. Transit is referred to as gochar, simply meaning that planets are always in motion. So how do we use transit to time events? So basically, these 6 things form the crux of KP astrology. So we'll start discussing one by one. So as I mentioned earlier, we have what I refer to as the 5 pillars. Okay, these 5 pillars, once you understand clearly, you have pretty much understood the basis for KP. Okay, yes, there are exceptions. Definitely there will be exceptions, which I will talk about as we take up more and more case studies. But in any chart that you see or you analyze, these 5 rules are definitely applicable. Okay, so the exceptions, we will deal with it later. But always keep these 5 rules in mind, 5 pillars or 5 rules, whatever you want to call it, one and the same. So the first rule of KP, which Sri Krishnamurti ji gave us, was every single planet will give us the results of its star lord. So what does it mean? Let's start looking at things practically as well. So this is KPNoX Plus. So if you have already installed and activated it, you must be already using it. If not, you can get to the client manager, and before that, please change the settings. This particular button, change the sky view city, because by default it is set to Dubai. In case you are living in a different city, you can always change the city. So let's say, for example, you are in Mumbai, just search for Mumbai and select the city. So what happens is all the details that you actually see in KPNoX now will be tied to Mumbai. Okay, so I will just go based on the assumption it is Dubai right now. So in the client manager, let's just add a test chart. I will just use the same details here, and since I am in Dubai, I will select Dubai, and so this is the chart. We will anyway start getting into the details of each and everything, but what I want to show you here, basically the first rule, it says every planet will give the results of its star lord. Now you can see in this particular table, the planets table, there are 9 planets listed here. So every single planet, whichever planet you pick, let's say I pick Venus here, Venus will give the results of its star lord. There is a column called star lord here. So Venus will give me the results of Sun. Same way, Sun is going to give me the results of Mercury. This is what this statement means, the very first statement. Every planet will give the results of its star lord. So whichever planet you pick, let's say, for example, I pick Saturn. Saturn will give me the results of Rahu. How it gives, to what extent it gives, we will see that later on. But this statement you have to remember always. Any chart you analyze, apply this rule first. So any planet that you want to talk about, let's say Mars, Mars will give me the results of Rahu. That is how you read the first statement. So far, so good?
So one question, when you
Yes.
say it will give the results of the Star
Yeah.
Lord,
Uh-huh.
Just trying to interpret that. I'm just taking a very practical example in this. If I take a practical example of Venus.
Yeah.
So Venus is positioned in Kritika Nakshatra. The star lord of Kritika Nakshatra, Kritika is Sun, and hence it is determined as Sun. Am I right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Now,
so when we briefly discuss about nakshatras, I mean, we will not go in depth into
correct.
what
But
each
I think I
nakshatra
tried
does.
correct. I tried to connect that nakshatra to the star. Star lord is the nakshatra, the
Nakshatra lord. Yes.
Correct.
Star lord is
Now,
also referred to as nakshatra lord.
correct. When you say it will give the results, meaning what? What does the result mean? What does the result of Sun mean?
If I talk about Venus, Venus will give me results of Sun, which is 6 and 11, meaning the houses.
Okay.
That is
Okay.
what
Houses.
it means. Correct.
Okay, the 6 from Lagna, is it?
Okay.
No, 6th house itself. If we don't say from anything from Lagna, 6th house and 11th house.
Okay.
How is 6 identified? How did 6 come here? How did the number 6 get derived under next to Sun?
Yeah, we will get to that. When we read the chart, we will see that.
Okay.
Yes. So for the time being, just remember that Venus will give me results of Sun.
Understood.
Okay. We will talk about houses later, how they are arrived at, how each one is calculated.
Okay.
Okay.
One more query here, sir.
Yeah.
Same place, sir. Sir, here 6th house and 11th house, the results will come. Just I want to know whether this will be benefic or malefic to the native.
Actually, we don't consider a lot of things which are in Vedic astrology. I think I missed that point. Now, in Vedic astrology, we have the concept of benefic and malefic. We also have the concept of a lot of yogs, like Gajkesari Yoga and Guru Chandal Yoga, so many of them. But in KP, we don't discuss about any of those yogs. It is simple stellar astrology, meaning we discuss, our focus is on the star lord or nakshatra lord, as we call it. It is stellar. So many concepts of Vedic are not implemented in KP. That is why it becomes very simple. There is no concept of friendship or enmity. Like, for example, in Vedic, we say, right, Sun and Saturn don't go along together because although they are father and son, they don't get along well, right? They are enemies of each other. So this is how we see it in Vedic. But in KP, we have no such concept.
Yes,
It's
sir.
very simple.
This query here was like 6th house is also for disease and enemies and service as well.
Correct.
So what kind of thing will come from 6th house? That is my question, sir.
See, it depends on the context. Now, if the person who's come to you is asking about the job, 6th house is also job.
Sir.
But if the same person has come to you saying that there is a particular disease that ABC is suffering, then 6th house will also talk about disease.
Okay, sir.
So every single house will have both positive and negative results.
Yes.
Okay. So depending on the context, you will interpret this. The house or planet will become benefic or malefic, depending on what is the context.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So first point clear. Planet
Yes,
will give the results of star lord. That is all we need to remember. So let's move on to the second point. An event must be promised in the chart if it has to happen. Now, what does this mean? So
Sir,
somebody
good evening,
comes to you. Hello.
Sir, good evening, sir. This is Srikanth here. Sorry,
Yes.
just now I got connected, sir.
Yeah, no problems. Tell
Yes,
me,
sir.
please.
Yes. No, sir. Just I wanted to wish you and the team, sir.
Okay. No problem. So welcome to the course. Anyway,
Thank you,
you'll
thank
get
you
the
very
recording. So if you have missed out on something, you can always watch it.
Fine, sir. Fine, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right. So as I was saying, an event must be promised in the chart if it has to take place. So what does it mean? So let's say person X comes to you and says, I'm not able to get married, even though I have been trying for 5 years or whatever, X number of years. So you will first check whether that particular event, in this case, marriage, is promised. Only then you will evaluate further. If there is no promise in the chart, you will simply say the answer is no and no further analysis required. This rule is applicable for any event, not necessarily marriage. If somebody says, I'm not getting a job or I'm not able to do business, I've tried business, but I've always failed. In which case, business, you have to see whether business is promised or not. If it is not promised and the person tries 100 times, the answer is no, right? So only if it is promised, you will analyze it further. Let's say, for example, somebody says, when can I buy property? Okay, first of all, is property purchase promised for the native who's come to ask? Only if it is promised, you will analyze Dasha, Bhukti, Antara or map, whatever we call it, and say, okay, you will be able to purchase it in 2024 or 2025, whatever. But if the promise itself is not there, you will tell him, sorry, if for you in this life, it is not promised. That will be the answer. Okay, so this is point number 2, which is very important. So the moment you analyze a chart, first thing you will see if there is a promise. If there is no promise, no further analysis required. You can just say, sorry, it will not happen. Okay, this point clear? Why promise is so important? Any event has to be promised. Otherwise, no need to analyze further.
And you're saying the promise can be identified in the chart. Is that?
Yes,
I mean,
you
I'm
can
trying to
identify.
read this. So if it is if I'm looking at a chart from
Yes.
predictive point of view, not from a retrospective point of view. I'm not
Right.
trying to say why somebody did not get married, but I'm trying to understand, will somebody get married? Yes,
Right.
the statement can be interpreted that it can be found on the chart that whether it is promised or not.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
Although we are not talking about predictive astrology, because see what happens is 95% of the cases that you will see, or at least what I have seen, more than 95% is that there is a problem. What do I do now? Okay. Maybe less than 5% of the time you will have somebody come to you and say, I want to do this. Can I do it? Or when can I do it? So that percentage is very limited. That is when predictive astrology comes into picture. So here, yes, our main focus is on dealing with the 95% of them. That way you will automatically start getting predictive as you analyze more and more charts. Okay, but yes, this is what it is. This is predictive astrology.
Okay.
Okay. Let's move on to the third point here, which says a single planet or a house cannot deliver all the results. It should always be a combination or a group. So what does it mean? Now let's go back to the example of a marriage. Normally we say marriage, 7th house is important, but 7th house alone cannot give the native marriage. It has to be a combination of houses which will work together and then give the event or make the event happen. Same way, a single planet, let's say for example Venus, normally either Venus or Jupiter is taken for marriage, but Jupiter or Venus alone cannot give marriage. It has to be a combination of planets which will determine how and when the marriage will happen. So always you will, as we discuss charts, I will tell you, which planets or how planets get involved and how houses get involved for every type of an event. So for a job, again, it's not enough if you just see the 6th house. There has to be somebody else also who will support the 6th house in order to ensure that the native gets a job. Or you cannot say that only Venus can give a job or Mars can give a job. We don't know. So it can never be a single planet or a single house which will enable the event. It is always a combination. So we'll talk about combinations and how they work later on. But this statement you need to remember. Okay, up to this point, clear? Or you have any questions?
It's clear.
It's clear. Then let's go to point number 4. So as I mentioned earlier, in KP, we don't say there are good or bad planets. For us, every planet is good, or any planet for that matter can create a negative impact. So similarly for houses as well. Now, normally, if you already done Vedic or you are aware of houses, generally it is said 8th house is a horrible house, 12th house again a bad house, 6th house again a bad house. But in KP we don't see that, because 6, 8 or 12, irrespective of which house it is, they can give you amazing results. And see, normally we see 2nd house of finance. Not necessary. It's not just money that comes with 2nd house. 2nd house can also create problems for you. That's why we say, irrespective of which house or which planet it is. Normally, what do we say? We say Rahu is a bad planet or Saturn is a bad planet. The moment you mention Saturn, a lot of people get scared, because Sadesati is seen as a very bad phase in anybody's life. Saturn is not bad, nor can you say that sun or moon is very good. Not necessary. Sun can create problem, moon can create problem, or sun can give you amazing results, moon can also give you amazing results. That's why we use this statement where we say there are no good or bad planets as per KP. Okay, so this point also is very important. You need to remember this. Up to this is clear, up to point number 4.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last point here says 12th house from the current house. So let's say we take house number 3, that is the current house. So we say 12th house from the current house will negate the results of the current house. So if I am talking about 3rd house, as I said earlier, there are 12 houses, right? It's like a clock and it's in circular motion. Okay. So if I want to talk about 3rd house, 12th house from any house will be the one before that. So if this is 3rd house, 2nd house will negate the results of whatever 3rd can give me. So in a chart, if you see 2nd and 3rd being given and your focus is on the 3rd house, then you can say that 2nd house will negate. When I say negate, you can treat it as a break, as no. If 3rd house is promising something, 2nd house will break that promise. Will say, no, I cannot deliver this event. For example, let's say 6th house, we said, just for clarification's sake, if 6th house will give me a job, 5th house will take away the job. It will say, no, I cannot give you the job. That is what it means. So if 7th house is the house of marriage, which means 7th house can deliver marriage, 6th house will break that marriage, or it will not allow the marriage to happen. That is what it means. Negation simply means saying no to the house that we are talking about. So if we are talking something about 12th house, so 12th house will talk about investment, but will 11 break it? No. There are some exceptions. This is what I mentioned. Every rule will have some exception. So when we come to exceptions, I will tell you. But normally, this is the rule. 12th house from the current house will negate the results. But it's not necessary that it will happen in each and every case. So I will tell you when it will happen and when it will not happen as we progress in the course. But this is a very generic rule, okay? But you have to keep this in mind. If somebody comes to you and asks about marriage, yes, you will focus on 7th house. But if you see 6th house also getting involved, you can tell him there is a problem. Either it will not allow the marriage to happen or it will create some kind of a problem in the marriage. Okay, that is the way you start interpreting it. Okay, so this concept you understood of what negation means? Any queries on that point?
Yeah, one query, sir, you mentioned about exceptions.
Yeah.
So just having in mind, like if 10th house and 11th house both are signified,
Right.
and we are concerned about the house of gains. So
Yeah.
will 10 negate that?
That is a very good question. Now you said house of gains. 11th is house of gains, right? Now,
Yeah.
in what context are you talking about gains? If it is a financial gain, for example, you have invested somewhere and you want to see if there is a financial gain, and then you see 11 and 10. So probably it will not be a gain because 10 will negate. But if you are talking about profession, will there be a promotion in the job, for example? Then 10 and 11 work together. Although 10 is status, 11 is gain. So there is no negation there. Okay, that is why I said it depends on the context.
Right, sir. Right. So context. Sir, in the same league, if
Yeah.
we have 10th house and 9th house,
Yeah.
and we are concerned about the profession, then will 9 act as negating house or the destiny house?
See, yes, you can look at it both the ways. Now, again, what happens? The person will be very specific. He will say, I want to change my profession. In that case, 9 becomes negation.
Right, sir. Right, sir.
Right? That is why I said everywhere you have to catch the context and then interpret the result.
Okay, fine, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that is very important. If you miss the context, your prediction will be wrong. Your interpretation will go wrong, so your prediction will go wrong. So you have to always catch the context. That's why I always tell everybody, when the client tells you the problem, write it down word to word, because for the client, it is a problem that he's telling you. But for an astrologer, he's actually telling you what to look for in the chart. He's actually giving you a solution. So if you write it down, you will find the words, the keywords or significators as we call it. If you miss that, you will misinterpret it. Okay, so this point is clear.
Maybe when we take a real example, you can just, put this
Yes,
in the
yes, we will
practical
apply
context.
every single rule that you see here for every single chart.
Sure.
Okay, but you have to keep this in mind right now, that these are the rules.
Okay.
Okay, yes, there are more rules. We will see on the way what other rules come into play, and there are also exceptions, as I told you. So once you do a few charts, you will know where to apply the exception. You will automatically understand that. These are the basic concepts which you need to understand. Okay, so far so good. So
Yes,
let's
sir.
proceed. Okay, so let's talk about planets. Basically, as in Vedic astrology, because KP, the foundation for KP is Vedic astrology, we only deal with 9 planets, although there are 12 planets which Western astrology talks about, which will include Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. For us, we don't take these 3 into consideration. For us, it's just the 9 planets that are listed here. So Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Rahu, and Ketu. So these are the 9 planets which we will consider in KP. Now, I have mentioned colors which are associated with each and every planet. You can also take shades of the same color. Okay, now there will definitely be some variation when we are talking about KP and AstroVastu here. Along, if you have already done some other form of astrology, maybe you will notice that colors are slightly different. Yes, that variation is always there, which we will also see when we talk about houses. There are certain significations which you may feel that this is different from Vedic. It happens. Or if you are doing Gemini, yes, there will again be certain significations which will overlap between planets and houses. But as far as KP is concerned and AstroVastu is concerned, these are the default colors, and you can use the same shades also. Because if you talk about red, for example, one of the shades that comes in red is pink as well. So you can add pink also. But for the time being, just keep these colors in mind for each of the planets. So the moment we say sun, you should know it represents orange color. Okay, because every single thing that we discuss about here will be used for remedies later on. Okay, so moon is white in color, pure white. Okay, Mercury is green, so dark green, light green, all that comes under Mercury. Venus is cream color or off-white. You can even take off-white or beige color. All the 3 you can include in case, since it's not here, if you want to make note of it, you can make a note of it. Mars is represented by red. Jupiter goes with yellow and shades of yellow, whatever is there. Saturn is black. Rahu goes with blue color, and Ketu is either black and white or multicolored. You can also make a note. It's multicolored. Anything that is multicolored comes under Ketu, not just black and white. Okay, and generally what happens is mankind, the human body is designed for 120 years. That is how it is calculated. Okay. Yes, there are exceptions again. There are people who have crossed 120, but 99.99% it will definitely be less than 120. Very rare cases where you have heard somebody going beyond 120 years, because the structure is designed for 120 years. So Vimshottari Dasha, which we follow in KP. So KP system follows what is referred to as Vimshottari Dasha. There are so many other forms of Dasha also, but in KP we use what is referred to as Vimshottari Dasha. So this has a span of 120 years. Now, as we discussed, we have 9 planets and 120 years, but they are not divided equally. Each planet gets a specific number of dasha years assigned to it. How it gets split, we will see that later. But for the time being, just keep this in mind. Sun has a span of 6 years as dasha. Moon has 10 years, so on and so forth. You can see the longest dasha is actually for Venus. Venus has 20 years as dasha time frame, and the least belongs to Sun, which has 6 years. Okay, you can actually see it here. Okay, if you just go here, leave Mercury. Let's say we take from Ketu. Ketu starts in 41. Sorry, Ketu, this is all end date. Okay, Ketu ended in 41, December 41. You see Venus ends on 4th December 61, which means this is 20 years, right? From here you can see Sun runs for 6 years. So from 61 to 67 is Sun. So this is 6 years. You can see the calculations here. Okay, Moon runs for 10 years. So from 2067 to 2077 is Moon. Moon is for 10 years, so on and so forth. So every dasha has a predefined number of years that is assigned. Okay, up to this point, any clarifications you need? Or this point is clear?
It's clear, sir.
It's clear. Okay, so you can calculate here from Moon to Mars. You can see what is the difference. 7 years. It will be 7 years because Mars is for 7 years. Mars and Ketu have the same duration. Okay. Now, even in these 9 planets, we classify them differently. So Sun and Moon are referred to as luminaries because they are the only ones which can give us light, although Moon cannot give us directly, but indirect light we get from Moon. So these are referred to as luminaries. Then there are 2 inner orbit planets. Now in the solar system, if you look at the sequence, is you have Sun in the center, then you have Mercury, Venus, right? And then you have Earth, and then you have Mars, correct? So what comes between Earth and Sun? These 2 are inner orbit planets. So you have Mercury and Venus. What comes after Earth? These are the 3 planets, that is Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Sorry, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. These are placed beyond Earth in the solar system. So these are referred to as outer orbit planets. And then we have Rahu and Ketu, which are referred to as nodes. Basically, these 2 planets have no physical presence. They are only mathematical points. We will see how it becomes important later on. But since these 2 have no physical presence, they are referred to as nodes, North Node and South Node. In case you are using Western astrology, you will see it as North and South nodes. Yeah. So any questions till this point? or we can proceed.
Yes, sir.
Now, in Vimshottari Dasha, it follows a particular sequence. It's not as per what we normally see in the solar system. The Dasha sequence will vary based on whatever system you use. But in Vimshottari, this is the sequence. And in KPNoX Plus, you can actually see that planets are mentioned in the same sequence. So you can use this as a learning tool as well. So this is the sequence. It starts with Ketu, ends with Mercury. This is the Dasha sequence as per Vimshottari. So it is Ketu, Venus, Sun, Moon, Mars, Rahu, Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury. This is the same sequence for every single chart. But you have to remember one interesting thing. Every chart will probably have, not probably, it will definitely have a different Dasha starting point. Okay, how it is calculated, we'll see it later. But this particular chart, it starts with Mercury Dasha. Now let's say I create another chart here. We will again call it test, but this time we'll change the date. Let's say October 2000, for example, and we'll take Dubai. Okay, you can see the difference. This chart starts with Mercury Dasha, whereas this chart starts with Venus Dasha. But what will be the difference? Let's see. Here, you notice it started with Mercury, and after Mercury, it goes back to Ketu. So this is in circular motion again. Okay. So Mercury, then it goes to Ketu, Venus, Sun, Moon, Mars, Rahu, Jupiter, Saturn. It ends with Saturn. Okay. Whereas in this chart, you can see it started with Venus, which means it will end with Ketu. So it runs through the whole chain here and then goes to the next one, which is Ketu. That's why you treat this as a circular motion. So whichever Dasha a chart will start with, let's say it starts with Mars, then it goes to Rahu, Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury, and then it will jump to Ketu, Venus, Sun, Moon. So this will be the last point. So this point is clear, how it is getting generated.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right. And then this is interesting. This is, of course, it's only for your information. Software will generally calculate everything, it will show you. But starting Dasha for any chart or any individual, how is it taken into consideration? You have to check the star of the moon at the time of birth. Now, let's take this, we'll take one chart here. Okay, let's say you can see here. Let's go to moon. If you see moon, which is the star here? It is Venus, correct? So the starting Dasha for this native, whoever it is, will be Venus. You can see here, the starting point will be Venus. Similarly, if you take the other chart, same chart, sorry. Okay, here the starting Dasha is Mercury. So you go to planets, moon, you see the star lord, it is actually Mercury. That is why the starting Dasha will be Mercury. Okay, for us in Vedic or in KP, moon is given a lot of importance. That is why anything that starts with will be dependent on moon, the placement of moon. That decides a lot of things for us, including our starting Dasha. So you can see here, moon nakshatra is Mercury. That is why the starting dasha will be Mercury. And similarly, you have DBA, right? So the dasha we already saw. If you want to know where the bhukti comes from, it will be the sublord of moon, and sublord of moon will be the antara. So the starting dasha for this particular native will be Mercury. You can see this will be the dasha, this will be the bhukti, and this will be the antara starting. So it will be Mercury, Venus, Saturn. That will be the D, B, and A for this native. So everything depends on moon. Whichever chart, you can open any chart and then check what is the starting point. You will see it from that place. So it will always be D, B, and A. So Mercury, Venus, Saturn. This will be the starting point for this native. Okay, this is only for information's sake. You should know from where it is calculated.
Sir, one question here. I understand the starting point is the where the moon is positioned. The moon is positioned on the nakshatra
Mercury.
of Mercury. Then the dasha
Right.
starts with the Mercury dasha. The
Correct.
question I have is, how is the determination for sublord and sub-sublord? So why is it Venus in this context? So what's the logic of sublord and sub-sublord?
Sub-sublord, yes. See, basically, moon is at a particular degree, right?
Correct.
Here it is, let's say 230 degrees.
Correct.
Now, our 360 degrees is divided into, let me open calculator here. I will mention it briefly now. There is a brief section also that I will talk to you about how it is calculated. Okay, so we have 360 degrees. That's our
Correct.
zodiac, right?
Correct.
And then we have 108 padas. Okay, how padas are arrived at? What is a pada? I will get to it later. You can see it here. There is a column called padas.
Correct.
But
20,
when you
27
divide
stars
by
would-
108, you get
Correct.
3 degrees 20 minutes. So whatever falls under that calculation will have a sublord and a sub-sublord. That is automatically assigned. That's how it gets calculated.
No, so that's where my confusion is. Let's take an example that somebody is born in. Take an example, Kritika Nakshatra. Yeah, Kritika Nakshatra happens to be the sun, the nakshatra of sun. So the dasha starts with the sun, Surya dasha.
Correct. Correct.
Now let's assume hypothetically that somebody was born in Pada 1. Yeah, of Kritika Nakshatra. Pada 1 will come at somewhere at the back end of Mesha Rashi, somewhere at the end of Mesha Rashi, I would say Kritika Nakshatra, because then it transits into Rishabha Rashi, right?
Correct.
Now, that's where I have a confusion. How is the Sabdasha? So let's assume I have the degrees. Hypothetically, let's assume 28 degrees was the degrees, yeah, because 28 is very close to 30. It should be within the first house of Mesha Rashi. I'm assuming it will be Pada 1, of Kritika Nakshatra.
Yeah.
How is the sublord determined here if I know the degrees? Just that's where I'm not clear.
No. Basically, what happens is we have 249 divisions. Actually, that will need a little explanation, especially if you look at Horari. We take a seed number from 1 to 249. How this 249 is arrived at, I will tell you later. But generally, we have 249 subdivisions. Okay, these 249 subdivisions. Now, let's say you take 249. It's about 1.44, whatever is the degree.
Correct.
So for each of these entities, you have what is referred to as a sublord. This is the concept that Sri Krishnamurti ji gave us. This is where the entire game changes. Why sublord is important, I will tell you. There is a separate section for it. But this is where the game changes.
Okay.
When you compare this with Vedic astrology, this is the difference. The sublord will change the entire game. Okay, so why we have 249 sublords, I will get to it later. But this gives us the degrees. That is where you assign what is the star. You'll know the star. You will also need to know the sub and sub. Where is it coming from? This is the calculation. This is where it
No,
kicks in.
correct. So because I have always got interviewed that the software tells me, but I'm not sure I'm trying to figure out the logic behind why the software tells me it is actually Venus sublord versus and Saturn sublord. So maybe
Okay.
you know,
Yeah,
it's more scientific and it's very mathematically.
yes, it is pure mathematics. Actually, if you just search for, let's say, sublord table, you will get the answer for that. You
Okay.
can see
Sublord.
here how to know your star lord.
Okay, sublord.
Yeah,
Okay.
just search for that. You will get the entire table. 1 to
Okay.
249, how it is calculated.
Okay.
It becomes very mathematical. That's why I don't want to get into details of that, but you can get the answer here.
Got it, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, because it's a lot of math.
Correct.
Right? But up to this point, you're clear how the dasha sequence is calculated, what are the planets, how we see them as per KP. I'm only discussing about KP. Right? Any questions till this point? Or is this okay?
This is okay.
This is okay. All right. We will start discussions about the planets and significations tomorrow. I'll also send you an Excel file for this, so you can keep it for reference and you can start adding significations. I have given brief list here, but there will be more and more significations that we will talk about as part of the course. So you can keep adding it to the list. I'll share the Excel file now after the class. So but up to this particular point, you have any doubts, you can make a note of it. So tomorrow when we start the class, first few minutes, we can actually clarify things and then move ahead. Okay. So we'll start same time tomorrow.
Okay. Same link, sir. Same Zoom.
No,
ID
every
password.
day I'll share the ID and the passcode.
Okay.
Okay, but I'll share the recording as soon as it's ready. Sometimes it takes a little longer, in which case I'll upload it tomorrow morning. It'll always be shared as a private link, so it will be tied to your email address.
Okay. Got it.
Okay. All right. So we will see tomorrow then. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
All right. Good night.
Thank you, sir.